Srimad Bhagavatam from any time, anywhere, any place. I'm just making sure the sound looks like it's going good. So we are here at Heathrow Airport.
Yeah.
Heathrow. That's how Saf London is saying Heathrow. Heathrow Airport. And I've got this little thing sticking out the top of the head right there. You can see that. There's some planes out the back. That is not artificial animation or fake background. We're here. And we are at the moment preparing to fly back to New York from London after a couple of weeks. She's very sad. Me too, to be honest, actually. But such is life. And but wherever we go, whatever we do, we can read the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we're going to do that right now.
Canto 4, Chapter 24, Text 44.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Text 34. My Lord, you are the origin of the creation by virtue of a lotus flower which sprouts from your navel. You are the supreme control of the senses and the sense objects, and you are also the all-pervading Bhaktivedanta. You are most peaceful because of your self-illuminating existence, and you are not disturbed by the 6 kinds of transformation. The Lord as Garbhodakshay Vishnu lies in the ocean Garbha within this universe, and from his navel the lotus flower sprouts. The Lord Brahma is generated from the lotus flower, and from Lord Brahma the creation of this material world begins. As such, the Supreme Personality Body, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, is the origin of the material senses and sense objects. Since Lord Shiva considers himself to be one of the products of the material world, his senses are under the control of the Supreme Creator. The Supreme Lord is also known as Rishikesha, Master of the senses, which indicates that our senses and sense objects are formed by the Supreme Lord. As such, he can control our senses, and out of his mercy engage them in the service of the Master of the senses. In the conditioned state, a living entity struggles in this material world and engages his senses for material satisfaction. However, if the living entity is graced by the Supreme Personality Body, he can engage these very senses in the service of the Lord. Lord Shiva desires not to be misled by material senses, but to engage always in the service of the Lord without being subject to contamination by materialistic influences. By the grace and help of Lord Vasudeva, who is all-pervading, one can engage his senses in devotional service without deviation, just as the Lord acts without deviation. Maybe what stood out, which might get highlighted in the next paragraph, is that Krishna, Vishnu, is not disturbed by the 6 kinds of transformations. Stood out because just dealing with family members who are going through the end of the 6 kinds of transformations, yeah, it's very disturbing. So yeah, that just stood out that he doesn't get affected by that.
Yeah, it's interesting point. Something actually your dad said recently with him is that everyone is very happy when God is at the beginning of those transformations, which is birth. Everyone's like, oh, birth is so good. But when God, everyone's happy when God comes to you, but when you have to go to God, no one's really happy. So at the end, when theoretically we're preparing to shed this mortal frame, this material body, and give the soul the opportunity to actually return to be with Krishna, people become distressed. But from the perfected point of vision or viewpoint, if we saw it and understood it as it is, just like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita time and time again, we wouldn't be disturbed. Don't be disturbed, Arjuna. All these people are already dead. You can't kill the soul. The soul is eternal. What are you worried about? But yeah, at the end of the transformations, it's always a sort of sadness, especially amongst humans. Next paragraph, the word Shantaya Kutastaya Swaruchise are very significant. Although the Lord is within this material world, he is not disturbed by the waves of material existence. However, conditioned souls are agitated by 6 kinds of transformations. Namely, they become agitated when they are hungry, when they are thirsty, when they are aggrieved, when they are illusioned, when they grow old, and when they are on the deathbed. Although conditioned souls become very easily illusioned by these conditions, in the material world, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the Super Soul, Vasudeva, is never agitated by these transformations. Therefore, it is said here, Kutastaya, that he is always peaceful and devoid of agitation because of his prowess, which is described herein as Swarochise, Rishe, indicating that he is illuminated by his own transcendental position. In other words, the individual soul, although within the illumination of the Supreme, sometimes falls down from that illumination because of his tiny position. And when he falls down, he enters into material conditional life. The Lord, however, is not subject to such conditioning. Therefore, he is described as self-illuminated. Consequently, any conditioned soul within this material universe can remain completely perfect when he is under the protection of Vasudeva, or when he is engaged in devotional service. So, I mean, that's really the whole philosophy in a nutshell. That we become very distressed and disturbed. These different... Of course, this was, Prabhupada lists different kinds of transformations, and then he mentions being hungry, or thirsty, or grieved, or illusioned. And I guess those are agitations that occur during the transformations. But yeah, this is the whole thing, that basically we are originally spiritual, but we come in contact with matter. Our knowledge of ourselves as spirit beings becomes covered by avidya, ignorance, which is the cause of the false identification as a human or as a body in the material world. And that leads, that also causes the transformation of our love for Krishna to transform into lust for the material and to enjoy ourselves as opposed to being a servant. That leads to anger and frustration because we can't enjoy, can't get what we want, can't keep what we want, and then that perpetuates the cycle. So yeah, that's very, very powerful. 35.
Passengers are reminded that smoking is not permitted in the airport.
I guess someone smoked. It isn't us, just so you know.
Text 35. My dear Lord, you are the origin of the subtle material ingredients, the master of all integration, as well as the master of all disintegration, the dominating deity named Shankar, and the master of all intelligence, known as the dominating deity Arjuna. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I'm trying to understand, maybe you remember, I think this is Lord Shiva offering prayers to the Lord, even though the Lord's not present. Before he instructs the Prachetas, he's first offering prayers to God, to Krishna, to Vishnu.
The whole universe is maintained by integrated power of the Supreme Lord, who is known in that capacity by the name Shankar. The material scientists may have discovered the law of gravity, which maintains the integration of objects within the material energy. Yet the master of all integration can create devastation by the disintegration blazing fire emanated from his mouth. The description of this can be found in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, wherein the universal form of the Lord is described. The master of integration is also the destroyer of this world by virtue of his disintegrating energy. Shankarshan is the master of integration and disintegration, whereas Pradyumna, another feature of Lord Vasudeva, is responsible for universal growth and maintenance. The word Shukshmaya is significant because within this gross material body there are subtle material bodies, namely mind, intelligence and ego. The Lord, in his different features, Vasudeva, Aniruddha, Pradyumna and Shankarshan, maintains both the gross and subtle material elements of this world. As mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, the gross material elements are earth, water, fire, air, and the subtle material elements are mind, intelligence and ego. All of them are controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Vasudeva, Shankarshan, Pradyumna and Aniruddha, and this will be further explained in the following verse. I was just thinking when I was reading this, like, of some, I don't know, scientist or someone who could, if they really sat down and read different parts of the Bhagavatam and to try to at least, like, with an open mind, is there a controlling force or not? You know, as thinking if you really get into it, Prabhupada's purports and the verses themselves. Yeah, you know, just envisioning someone realizing, wow, there's actually some intelligence behind it. Because just reading like this, you know? Yeah, I don't know, I just kind of envision that because generally it's like people who are theists, not atheists, but theists. Theists.
They believe in God.
Yeah, so they often seen as being sentimental. But I was reading like this, and for me it doesn't
sound sentimental.
It doesn't do anything for me.
Reading this.
Yeah, I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, I don't need to be convinced by the technicalness, but my point is that Prabhupada's books and the purports are not sentimental. I was just reading and I think if someone actually sat down and broke it down, and yeah, it's been interesting how you couldn't grudgingly admit there may be some law and order behind all this, you know? Even if you can't come to that, oh, it's Krishna, it's this little blue boy, whatever. Just some acceptance of it.
Yeah, I guess the thing is most religions maybe don't offer such a scientific or detailed explanation.
Yeah.
They just depend on you to believe, you know, with blind faith, quote unquote, faith.
Or you go to hell.
Or you go to hell, yeah. Believe or die, kind of.
Yeah.
Believe or suffer. Okay, we'll read one more. Text 35. My dear Lord, you are the origin of the subtle material ingredients, the master of all integration, as well as the master of all disintegration. Is that the one you just read? Yes. She went back.
I was just looking at the verse. The one you're reading is a bit longer than that.
Yeah, okay, so we'll take, what do you want? You want to read it or not?
Well, I want to upload this today, I'll be honest.
Okay, alright, so we're going to go. Thank you very much for tuning in. Keep it short and sweet. And because we got a plane to catch.
Yeah, literally. Go.
Okay, so thank you all very much for tuning in. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Run to Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.